They called him the villain of Boston's favorite bar, the unwelcome guest at every cast dinner, the name everybody whispered but nobody said aloud. On the surface, he was just another supporting player joining the legendary Cheers ensemble. Off camera, however, he became the one man every cast member from Ted to Rhea couldn't stand. Welcome to the untold story of the actor who was secretly hated by the entire Cheers cast. Imagine stepping onto the Cheers set for the very first time. The iconic redwood bar, the familiar stools, the comforting glow of neon signs. This was TV history in the making. The original cast had already forged tight bonds through weeks of rehearsal and live tapings. Ted Danson in his signature white dress shirt and suspenders effortlessly bantered with Shelley Long's Diane, their chemistry sizzling as cameras rolled. George Wendt perfected Norm's entrance with a single word, Norm. Cheers felt like family, until he arrived. His name was Mark Sutton, a journeyman character actor with a handful of credits and high hopes. At 35 he'd paid his dues in regional theater and small TV parts. When Cheers co-creator James Burrows called to offer him a multi-episode arc as Ralph, the earnest cousin of Woody Boyd, Mark assumed the series was handing him a golden ticket. He pictured himself joining the cheers of studio applause, sipping Sam Malone's beer, and becoming part of TV royalty. Instead, he unwittingly stepped into the eye of a storm. From day one, Mark felt the chill. The cast offered curt nods instead of warm welcomes. Mary Steenburgen, making a guest appearance that month, sensed the tension and tried to bridge the gap, only to be brushed aside when she asked Mark about his backstory. Even Diane's adoptive mother Carla, normally quick with a sarcastic quip, snapped at him during a lunch break. He chalked it up to bout of on-set stress. After all, Cheers filmed live before a crowd. The pressure ran high. But as the days passed, the icy stares persisted, and gossip began to spread. Backstage rumors took on a life of their own. Some whispered Mark was a diva, demanding extra rehearsal time and special wardrobe treatment. Others claimed he refused to learn blocking notes, forcing the director to call extra takes. A few joked that he tried to outshine Ted Danson, mimicking his delivery and subtly undermining Sam's easy charm. Cast members found his attempts at humor forced, his energy off-key. Unknown to Mark, his every move was under a tacit microscope. If he laughed too loudly, he offended. If he stayed too quiet, he seemed standoffish. No matter what he did, he felt the weight of resentment pooling around him like bitter beer. The real breaking point came during one late-night taping. A new scene called for Mark's character Ralph to deliver an emotional monologue about feeling unwanted in the family. Ted and Rhea Gilmore, Diane's roommate Roz, watched from the sidelines as cameras rolled. But when Mark went up on his emotional crescendo, a raw, unpolished take, Rhea shot him a glare that could curdle whipped cream. Later in the green room, Frederick Whitaker, a stand-in for Sam, confessed to a producer, "He doesn't get it. Cheers is about camaraderie, about belonging. Ralph should be endearing, not an interloper." Behind the scenes, the real Cheers cast was grappling with creative tensions of their own. Where would Diane's arc go? How to keep Woody's innocence from feeling stale? Into that crucible stepped Mark Sutton, the inexperienced guest star who inadvertently became the lightning rod for every frustration. It wasn't just personality clashes, it was the fear that a wrong note, a misstep from an outsider, might disrupt a show riding high in the Nielsen ratings. Protecting the series felt like defending the walls of their second home. As episode 4 neared its live broadcast date, whispers morphed into outright rebellion. George Wendt reported overhearing Rhea calling Mark the interloper while polishing her costume jewelry. Woody Boyd's portrayer Paul Michael Glazer reportedly refused to rehearse scenes with Ralph unless Mark apologized for crashing our set. Carla, known for her barbed words, allegedly quipped, "I'd rather eat soggy peanuts than share a scene with him." By the time the audience filed into the studio, the cast had formed an unspoken pact: endure Ralph's scenes, but resist letting him tarnish the Cheers magic. None of this reached the viewers at home. On screen, Mark's Ralph delivered a heartfelt storyline about family loyalty, complete with awkward pauses and a clumsy punchline. He landed a few laughs, elicited sympathetic smiles, and then bowed out as his character returned to Indiana. To millions, it was just another memorable subplot. Off-camera, though, Mark packed up his scripts, blissfully unaware that he'd leave behind more than leftover coffee cups. He'd leave a legacy of disdain among TV's tightest-knit ensemble. The tension simmered during every rehearsal that week. It began with small slights that felt inconsequential at first. Mark arriving minutes late, Mary tossing an icy look when he missed his mark, George Wendt muttering under his breath about amateur hour. But then came the first major incident, a live run-through in front of the studio audience. Ralph's climactic plea to Woody, meant to be warm and humorous, ended in disaster when Mark stumbled over his own words. turning "You're My Family" into a garbled jumble. Cameras rolled on, but Ted and Rhea exchanged disappointed glances that registered on every monitor. The laughter that followed felt forced, more pity than genuine amusement. Behind the scenes, whispers swelled into something more sinister. In the costume room, Carlo allegedly sneered when Mark asked for an extra sock for his cold feet, snapping, "You'll survive with one pair, newbie." Later, during a lunch break in the commissary, a producer overheard Rhea prompting Shelley to share tales of real acting lessons she'd taken downtown, implying Mark lacked any formal training. Even the set hands felt uneasy, taking the magician's advice to keep run sheets hidden, and leaving Mark to scour for his next scene directions. Then came the dreaded two-camera fiasco. During one riveting dinner scene scripted to showcase all the regulars, Mark's character was supposed to sip nervously from a pint before launching into a heartfelt confession. Instead, he knocked the glass off the table, sending beer sloshing across the floor and soaking a stack of newly printed scripts. Ted jumped in, ad-libbing lines to salvage the scene, but that improv saved the episode while marking Ralph as the one who couldn't handle basic props. Rumors spread that Mark had been drinking on set, despite his insistence on black coffee fueling gossip that he was unprofessional and unstable. The mugging controversy followed soon after. In a pivotal scene, Ralph approaches Carla for advice. As Carla delivers a snarky quip, Mark misreads her cue and launches into an uncharacteristic mug glare for comedic effect. Carla, expecting subtlety, snaps out of character with a brutal, "Don't fake me out, rookie," before storming off set. The director calls cut, but the damage is done. In the next daily screening, everyone on set hears the crackle of tension magnified through the monitors. Mark's attempt to land laughs is recast as insolence. Meanwhile, Paul Michael Glaser, better known as Woody, takes a secret stand. He insists on extra close-up rehearsals so Mark can hone his timing. Then, moments before cameras roll, Paul vanishes, leaving Mark scrambling to find his scene partner. The Saturday wardrobe supervisor later confides that Paul loved messing with the new guy's head, convinced it was toughening up his performance. By the time cameras roll, Mark's once confident grin is replaced by a sheepish edge that projects insecurity. As rehearsals wore on, Mark feels the walls closing in. He notices whispered side conversations in production meetings, half-hearted greetings, the way the cast clan confides to each other with him left outside. His voice falters during a script read when he finally confronts Ted in private, asking why their rapport feels so cold. Ted, ever the diplomat, offers a vague, "It's just the pace of the show," before excusing himself, leaving Mark's question unresolved. The story might have remained one of many backstage dramas, except for one tape. A long-forgotten home video, shot by an enthusiastic floor director and shelved in the network archives, captures moments of raw frustration. Ted's exasperated eye roll, Rhea's clipped time for a break, and Carla's loaded sigh when Mark bursts into the green room. These candid gestures, long buried, preserve the unspoken tenor of disapproval. Yet the network, fearing legal blowback and damaging publicity for its flagship series, keeps the footage locked away. The production code is clear. No actor should ever be portrayed as disloyal or unprofessional. So the secrets slumber in a vault beneath the studio, unheard by the very viewers who believed Cheers embodied camaraderie. Mark, unaware of the undercurrents, leaves the series believing his performance simply didn't resonate. He departs with gratitude for the screen time and moves on to other gigs, chalking up Cheers to a valuable lesson in resilience. It isn't until years later, when an unauthorized Ted Danson biography mentions the guy nobody liked, that Mark connects the dots. Stunned, he reaches out to producers, only to learn of the suppressed tapes and whispered complaints. The revelation cuts deeper than any on-camera flub. He realizes he was scapegoated to protect the show's chemistry, an outsider sacrificed on the altar of ensemble harmony. Only now, decades after filming wrapped, has the full story emerged. In retrospective interviews, Ted, Rhea, and George all acknowledge misjudging Mark's earnestness. They admit the barbed jokes were cruel and regret letting groupthink dictate their behavior. They confess that protecting the show should never have meant ostracizing a fellow actor. Today, they praise Mark's subsequent work and express remorse for the shadows they cast over his time on Cheers. This saga stands as a cautionary tale. Even the friendliest set can harbor cliques, and an outsider's beating heart can be mistaken for dissonance. Cheers taught millions about friendship, yet reminds us that the real world still needs voices brave enough to speak out when camaraderie turns to cruelty. Mark Sutton's departure from Cheers left him chasing closure for years. He landed a string of guest spots on sitcoms and small roles in dramas, often introduced with the line, "Cheers veteran Mark Sutton," a label that filled him with equal parts pride and unease. Agents whispered that his time on the hit show had opened doors, yet Sutton always sensed an invisible barrier. At industry mixers, seasoned casting directors nodded politely, then pivoted to discuss other alumni. In his heart, he knew something unseen had haunted his experience, a cold shadow cast by memories of snide asides and half-hidden glances. The first shock came when an unauthorized Ted Danson biography was published in 2005. Sutton leafed through pages describing the new guy nobody warmed up to, then froze at passages quoting offhand remarks by Rhea Perlman, calling him the interloper. He reread accounts of Carla's withering quips, and George Wentz whispered complaints about Sutton's false energy. His stomach knotted as he realized the muttered backstage grievances had solidified into printed gossip. Determined to set the record straight, he reached out to the author, but received only a terse email confirming confidentiality agreements and promising no further commentary. Sutton tucked the book away, angry that the show he'd loved had been built on camaraderie that excluded him. In 2010, he summoned courage to pursue a meeting at NBC's Burbank lot, petitioning an old producer he'd befriended during taping. After signing non-disclosure waivers, Sutton was led into a private screening room. There, he watched unseen footage from episode rehearsals, Ted's dismissive eye rolls, Perlman's impatient head shakes, and momentary but unmistakably sharp stares from the rest of the cast. Audio captured Rhea discussing his lack of respect for the floor manager's cues, and Carla mocking his awkward posture. As the room hushed, Sutton felt a mix of vindication and pain, proof that he hadn't imagined the hostility, yet regret that these professionals had treated him with such cruelty. When the producer offered Sutton the raw tapes, Sutton declined. He realized revisiting their bitterness might only reopen old scars. Instead, he asked that the footage be used for internal training on set etiquette and inclusive culture. He insisted that future guest actors learn how group dynamics can turn toxic. The producer agreed, promising the League of Sitcom Producers would screen these clips at annual workshops. Sutton left the studio lot with a sense of purpose. He would convert pain into prevention rather than retribution. 5 years later, a surprising invitation arrived. The American Film Institute was hosting a Cheers retrospective and wanted Sutton on a reunion panel. His first instinct was to refuse. Why sit alongside people who'd shunned him? Yet he recognized an opportunity for genuine dialogue. On stage at the venerable Dolby Theater, Sutton joined Danson, Went, Perlman, and others under warm spotlights. When he stepped to the microphone, the audience watched in silence. Sutton recounted his experience not with bitterness, but with honesty. "I came here thinking I was joining a family. Instead, I felt like an outsider. But I also learned the power of inclusion, how much talent and goodwill I nearly lost." Ted Danson stood and clasped Sutton's shoulder. He admitted he'd misjudged Sutton's eagerness as arrogance, and apologized for contributing to an unwelcoming atmosphere. Rhea followed, her voice wavering as she confessed how protectiveness of her role had clouded her judgment. George and Carla offered their own regrets, recasting their earlier jabs as misplaced attempts to defend a beloved workspace. The live audience erupted in applause, not just for the show but for this moment of vulnerability among legends. Backstage after the panel, Sutton found Rhea waiting. They hugged tightly, forging a bond from the confessed wounds. Rhea's eyes shimmered as she whispered, "I should have welcomed you." Sutton smiled, replying, "And I should have asked for help instead of assuming hostility." Their embrace felt like penance paid, a release of years spent wondering why he'd been frozen out. That same year, Cheers, the complete series DVD boxed set was released, featuring a bonus disc with candid on-the-set footage. Producers chose to include short curated clips of early tensions, not to shame anyone, but to offer viewers a glimpse into the hard work behind the laughs. Fans expressed surprise at the honesty. Comments on fan forums praised the inclusion as a bold move, calling it the most human introduction to a scripted reality they'd ever seen. Sutton, inspired by these developments, penned an op-ed for a major entertainment magazine titled "The Cost of Exclusion on Set." He wrote about cliques in workplaces, the temptation to ostracize new voices, and the responsibilities veteran employees have to nurture newcomers. He shared anecdotes from Cheers, funny, insightful, and raw, to illustrate how one actor's struggles could teach an industry to be more welcoming. The piece went viral, landing on management desks at studios worldwide. Sutton received messages from production managers thanking him for sparking conversations on inclusion in their own shows. In 2019, Sutton established the New Guy Fund, providing grants for emerging actors facing on-set harassment or isolation. He partnered with industry guilds to offer mentorships, shadowing programs, and sponsorship for guest roles. The fund's pledges from veteran stars, many of whom contributed pensively, underscored a collective desire to rectify past mistakes. Young actors testified how mentorships saved them from quitting, crediting Sutton's initiative for giving them courage to speak up. Today, Sutton's journey from Cheers outcast to industry advocate echoes as a cautionary tale and an uplifting success story. The actor whose presence once provoked icy glances now commands respect for transforming exclusion into empowerment. His story reminds colleagues in every creative endeavor that genuine camaraderie requires conscious effort, that talent flourishes when strangers become allies. So when you raise your glass at a gathering, remember Mark Sutton's path and pledge to welcome the newcomer, for the strength of any ensemble depends on the warmth of its welcome. Mark Sutton's efforts to reshape his legacy culminated in an unexpected reunion in 2022. As Cheers celebrated its 41st anniversary, Paramount Pictures organized a star-studded gala in Boston's historic Wang Theater. Producers extended invitations not only to the core cast, but also to every memorable guest star, including Sutton. Stepping onto the red carpet alongside Ted Danson, Rhea Perlman, and George Wendt, he felt the same excitement he'd experienced decades earlier, now tempered by empathy, rather than fear. Flashbulbs popped as the former interloper walked past reporters who murmured, "He looks great, what a comeback." In that moment, Sutton realized how far he'd traveled from the frozen solitude of his first Cheers taping. Inside the Wang's grand lobby, cast and crew gathered for a surprise live table read of a never-before-aired Cheers script. Sutton's name appeared on the lineup. When he took his place at the mic next to Shelley Long's Diane and Kelsey Grammer's Frasier, the applause was warm and genuine. As they read through sharp, witty dialogue, laughter washed over them. Sutton delivered Ralph's lines with a self-assured ease born of hard-earned wisdom. When he ad-libbed a playful jab at Carla's sass, Perlman responded with a knowing smile rather than a scowl. The camaraderie felt natural, a testament to healing, not just for Sutton but for everyone who'd once built walls around him. After the reading, the cast moved into a Q&A with an audience of superfans and local media. A moderator asked, "Mark, after all this time, what was it like to come back?" Sutton paused, scanning the familiar wood-paneled set pieces. "Honestly," he began, voice steady, "it felt like returning home, with the caveat that home had moved from exclusion to inclusion. I came back as a guest, but I left as family." The room erupted in applause, and even Ted Danson nodded, his eyes misting. In that exchange, Sutton's journey came full circle. The actor once shunned had become an emblem of reconciliation. The gala continued with a dozen curated Cheers-themed vignettes, Norm's barstool confessions, Coach's classic bumbling, Carla's barbed retorts, leading to a final montage celebrating the series' legacy. As the screens faded to black, videos of Sutton's early struggles and later advocacy played in parallel, reminding everyone that no legacy is without its storm clouds. Fans cheered as they recognized the message. Enduring art and enduring relationships thrive on openness, not secrecy. Studio executives, watching the crowd's reaction, quietly agreed that Sutton's story deserved its own spotlight, and conversations began about a documentary focused solely on his experiences. Within months, production commenced on That Guy at Cheers, a feature-length documentary tracing Sutton's journey from estrangement to embrace. It interwove never-before-seen rehearsal tapes, candid interviews with cast members, and Sutton's own reflections. Perhaps most moving was a return to the original Paramount stage, now repainted but still bearing the same neon Cheers sign. There, Sutton spoke directly to camera. "I was terrified my first day, but I also believed in this place. I've learned that vulnerability can be a gift, and that welcoming others can be the bravest act of all." The documentary premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival to standing ovations and sparked another wave of appreciation for his advocacy work. Parallel to the documentary's success, Sutton's industry outreach continued. He partnered with the Screen Actors Guild to create a set dynamics certification program, training showrunners and producers in fostering inclusive environments. Thousands of crew members and guest performers now complete the welcoming onboard course before setting foot in a studio. Testimonials poured in from editors, grips, and featured extras, who recounted the transformative impact of simple gestures, a greeting at call time, an introduction to key cast, an invitation to the catering table. Sutton's vision that no newcomer should fear isolation had become institutional practice. Perhaps the sweetest vindication came when Cheers itself returned for a limited revival series in 2024. Paramount invited original stars and pivotal guest actors to reprise their roles. Sutton received a letter from James Burrows. "Your return to Cheers feels essential. We can't imagine Ralph without you." Though his new character arc differed, this time he played a mentor to Woody's son, Sutton approached the role with heartfelt gratitude. On set, he experienced genuine camaraderie at every turn. In a filmed behind-the-scenes featurette, Rhea Perlman praised his work ethic and spirit, saying, "He brought the warmth we all wish we'd offered him the first time around." Now, as Cheers continues to delight a new generation, Mark Sutton's presence serves as a living reminder that redemption is possible, and that forgiveness can build stronger ensembles than any script alone. His journey from the cold shoulder to center stage taught Hollywood that the most successful casts are those who embrace newcomers with open arms. And in everyday workplaces outside of Tinseltown, Sutton's story resonates just the same. Neglect the outsider at your own risk, but welcome them with curiosity and kindness, and you might discover strengths you never knew existed. Mark Sutton didn't slow down after his Cheers reunion. If anything, his mission gained momentum. He traveled from Los Angeles to London, offering keynote speeches at film schools and industry conferences about the power of inclusion. In each auditorium, he shared candid anecdotes about freezing in front of cameras, the sting of silent treatment, and the relief of being welcomed years later. His honesty struck chords far beyond sitcom lore. Students and professionals alike left feeling energized to reach out to newcomers in their own fields. Meanwhile, the New Guy Fund expanded into a full nonprofit, sponsoring international fellowships for guest actors on major productions. Sutton partnered with world-renowned directors who pledged to reserve roles for underrepresented artists, ensuring that fresh talent receives proper orientation and mentorship from day one. On newsstands, entertainment magazines ran cover stories headlined, "From Outcast to Advocate," chronicling how one man's painful experience sparked systemic change. Casting agents began including fund representatives in contract negotiations, making inclusion clauses a standard part of guest star agreements. In corporate America, HR departments took notice. Sutton's case studies were adapted into training modules for Fortune 500 companies, emphasizing how cliques can undermine teamwork in any environment. Bank executives learned that failing to onboard new hires effectively could cost millions in wasted talent. Hospital administrators discovered that welcoming medical residents improved patient outcomes. Tech startups found that pairing each newcomer with a seasoned buddy reduced turnover by nearly 40%. Everywhere he went, Sutton reminded listeners that compassion and simple gestures, an introductory email, a quick coffee chat, could reshape organizational culture. At the Screen Actors Guild annual gala, Sutton accepted the inaugural On-Set Hero Award, a recognition created to honor those who foster positive environments. Surrounded by colleagues, he dedicated the trophy to every actor who ever felt sidelined. "This isn't just mine," he said. "It belongs to anyone who's had to summon courage on day one." A standing ovation followed, and cameras captured tears in the eyes of veteran performers who recalled their own moments of alienation. That evening, the SAG president announced mandatory welcoming onboard certification for all professional sets by the following year. Meanwhile, Sutton quietly continued acting. He won acclaim for a recurring role in a popular drama series, playing a psychologist who helps disaffected youths find purpose. Viewers praised his nuanced performance and often cited his off-screen advocacy when discussing the character's empathy. Critics lauded his ability to channel real-life compassion into every line, noting that his subtle expressions carried the weight of authenticity earned through personal trials. Sutton's portrayal became a benchmark for guest artists, illustrating how life experience can enrich performance. His memoir, Beyond the Barstool, hit bestseller lists in 2023. In it, Sutton detailed everything from early auditions to corporate training sessions, weaving a narrative that connected laughter and tears, scripts and speeches. Readers praised the book for its raw vulnerability and practical wisdom, particularly a chapter outlining 5 steps to build a welcoming team, now used in workplaces worldwide. Book tour stops routinely sold out, with fans lining sidewalks for hours. Sutton greeted each person with a genuine smile, autographing copies and offering personal notes of encouragement. Young actors wrote to him from across the globe. A newcomer in Seoul shared how Sutton's partnership program got her first guest role on a hit drama. A recent graduate in São Paulo credited his workshops for helping her stand up to toxic cliques on set. Letters poured into Sutton's office, each one a testament to the lives he'd touched. He built a small team to respond, ensuring no message went unanswered. Seeing tangible proof that his ordeal had blossomed into collective healing reaffirmed his belief in the power of speaking one's truth. At industry roundtables, Sutton urged veteran actors to share more than scripts. He asked them to share stories, to normalize the jitters and uncertainties every role brings. From sitcoms to streaming blockbusters, producers invited him to consult on casting processes and orientation rituals. Some shows began hosting meet and greets before the first shoot, allowing guest actors to mingle with crew and regular cast. Others introduced first-day check-ins, where a designated coordinator called every newcomer to ask how they were settling in. These small changes rippled outward, reducing isolation and improving morale across sets. Now, as Sutton prepares to direct his own feature film, he incorporates mandatory inclusive onboarding and production plans. The script explores themes of belonging and identity, reflecting his personal journey. Casting notices specify that each role, major or minor, comes with a guaranteed orientation day, mentorship pairing, and access to mental health resources. Crew contracts include a code of conduct emphasizing courtesy and openness. Convinced that art and environment shape one another, Sutton's debut as a director promises to model the respectful, nurturing culture he's championed for years. Through every step from starstruck newcomer to industry luminary, Mark Sutton has transformed personal trauma into a universal call for empathy. His story reminds us that a cold shoulder can scar, but a warm greeting can heal. When you see a fresh face in your workplace, think of Sutton's journey. Offer your hand, share a laugh, include them in your circle. Because in the end, true success is measured not by ratings or resumes, but by the kindness we extend and the communities we build. Mark Sutton's lifelong odyssey shows that inclusion is not a nice-to-have but a strategic imperative. His final chapter begins with his emerging role as a mentor to rising artists across disciplines. Film students, community theater groups, and digital creators now seek his guidance on shaping collaborative cultures that honor every voice. He travels from Los Angeles to Durban, lecturing on the importance of onboarding rituals that go beyond orientation packets, blending storytelling, shared meals, and peer-to-peer shadowing into every new hire's first week. He insists that inclusion should be baked into every script note and production call sheet, reminding collaborators that human connections fuel creativity. As the lights of Hollywood Boulevard gleam each night, Sutton's latest directorial debut premieres to critical acclaim. Critics laud the film's vivid ensemble performances, noting how every actor shines, suggesting that the warming environment he cultivated on set is as integral to the movie's success as its story. Industry watchers now cite Alter Silver Screen as the turning point, where Sutton turned inclusion from concept into mainstream practice. Meanwhile, the New Guy Fund celebrates its 10th anniversary, having dispersed millions in grants and mentorships. Fellow actors founded spin-off initiatives in animation, gaming, and live performance, extending Sutton's blueprint far beyond the soundstage of Cheers. But beyond awards and statistics, what endures is Sutton's personal testament to the power of empathy. In boardrooms and classrooms, his case studies on workplace inclusion are required reading. When he speaks, listeners lean in, recognizing that the cold shoulder they once wielded was not harmless. It had the power to wound as deeply as a harsh script note. Sutton's legacy becomes clearer still with each newcomer who finds belonging because of his pioneering programs. A young actress in Mexico City credits the fund's peer buddy system with giving her confidence to audition for a major film. In Vancouver, a first assistant director revamped crew onboarding procedures after reading Sutton's op-ed, reducing early attrition rates at one studio by 20% within a single quarter. Perhaps the most meaningful testament to his influence arrived in the form of a simple letter addressed to him by a novice stunt performer just starting out. "Your words gave me courage to speak up when I was silenced," it read. "Because you welcomed me, I no longer felt alone." Sutton carried that letter in his jacket for weeks, drawing strength from its simple sincerity. As we close this chapter, consider the lesson embedded in Sutton's story, that every workplace, from Cheers to corporate boardroom, thrives when newcomers are embraced. That no one should endure silent cold or whispered derision simply because they walk into a room for the first time. Sutton reminds us that the warmth we extend in greeting echoes far beyond any soundstage. Ultimately, Mark Sutton's life arc teaches that confessions of resentment can be reframed into beacons of change, that admitting hatred need not be the end but the beginning of radical inclusion. So let his journey inspire you to check your own response to outsiders, to offer welcome instead of reproach, curiosity instead of contempt. In doing so, you carry forward the greatest gift one actor ever gave another, a chance to belong. In a world where cliques form as swiftly as gossip, Sutton's narrative cuts through the noise with lucidity. His perseverance reminds us that everyone deserves a seat at the table, a line in the script, and recognition for their contributions. We celebrate the Cheers cast triumph, but more importantly, we honor the outcasts who rose above exclusion. So, whether you're an actor, executive, or office administrator, remember this simple truth. Kindness costs nothing but delivers exponential returns. By building bridges instead of walls, we cultivate creativity, unlock potential, and foster communities resilient enough to weather any storm. Raise your glass to Mark Sutton's indomitable spirit, to his transformation from persona non grata to paragon of welcome. Let his story remind us that every guest carries untold talent, every newcomer brings fresh perspective, and every hesitant arrival deserves an introduction marked by respect. As the final curtain falls, ask yourself, how can I kindle the spirit of openness entrusted to me? What simple gesture will signal that here you belong? Let your actions echo Sutton's legacy beyond any soundstage, in every hallway, every meeting room, every community gathering. Extend welcome, sow inclusion, and watch how our collective story transforms. In the end, Mark Sutton's journey is a testament to the extraordinary power of belonging. It teaches that no matter how daunting the stage, how biting the cold shoulder, a single handshake, a heartfelt greeting, can rewrite destinies, forge enduring alliances, and illuminate the path for all who follow. Cheers!